Hello guys, and welcome to the fourth video of Movie Dissect. Today I would like to start with a small story. I've got my advisors here and there, and people have been telling me, Bolo, just concentrate on the trends, concentrate on the hype, try to review only the modern movies. And after a very careful consideration, I decided to fuck it. I'm not gonna forget about the educational purpose of my channel, and that's why I decided to talk to you guys about one of the most finest epics ever made, and by the way, one of the favorite films of Steven Spielberg, Lawrence of Arabia. The movie, which is directed by David Lean and written by Robert Bolt, unfolds itself during the First World War. And what was happening back then? Well, Arabia was fighting the Turkish Ottoman Empire, and the British were the allies to Arabia. So, in this context, our main character, Thomas Edward Lawrence, was sent to Arabia to become the liaison to the Arab task forces. And after he completed his mission successfully by contributing not only strategically, but also by taking part on the battlefields, he came back to England and became known as Lawrence of Arabia, which is a pretty epic name for a pretty epic. And when he came back, he decided to write about all of his adventures, and that's actually what made him famous. If you'll watch the film, you'll notice that the film falls into two very separate narratives. So in the first one, we follow Lawrence very closely. We experience what he experiences, we identify with him, we see what he sees. But more importantly, this first part of the movie happens over a very short period of time, because his journey to Arabia and his first interactions are a matter of a couple of days. Which gives us the right, I think, to call this part of the movie the novelistic part, because novels also happen over a very short period of time. The second part of the movie, however, takes place over a very long period of time, a couple of years maybe, and this part of the movie contains a lot of ellipses, which means that you have two scenes, and between them a cut into the future, but in between the scenes, stuff has also been happening, which has been completely skipped. And a good example of that is when Lawrence and his followers are waiting for a Turkish train to come on the railroad, and they are planning to blow it up. They succeed in that, but the preparation for the attack has not been shown. The director, David Lean, he lets us take some distance from Lawrence this time and identify more with a more objective character, like the journalist, for example, who came to documentate all of the Lawrence's heroics, or Lawrence's companion and his very good friend throughout the movie, Ali. The reason for distancing ourselves from Lawrence is because by now Lawrence has kind of proven to be this unreliable character due to some things he said before, such as that he enjoys killing people, for example. And it's this exact change in perception of Lawrence that helps us to bridge the long duration of the movie. Because let's be honest, making someone watch the movie that's 4 hours long is not an easy mission. But David Lean, he was the true master of the timing, and he understood that the same as the long piece of music, the film also needs its run-ups, pauses, gear-ups, and adjustments in perceptions. Lawrence of Arabia is more than just a historical film or a war film. It's a large-scale study. And the question that is asked throughout the movie is, who is T.E. Lawrence now? Who is he? Who is he? Tell me. The film actually implies that Lawrence has many identities, but still you cannot form an image of him. During the very first scene, we see a man whose face is covered in a motorcycle mask and who a little later crashes with his motorcycle. And in the next half hour, the man called T.E. Lawrence has been called a lot of names. A clown, an exhibitionist, a warrior, a poet, etc. We also see that Lawrence can be a little bit arrogant or clumsy, but the real emphasis is that Lawrence has something to do with the pain, and that is emphasized with the legendary cut to the sun. And a little bit earlier before that, Lawrence actually said, "The trick, William Potter, is not minding that it hurts." Which at this point shows us that Lawrence is also a little bit of a masochist. I don't know how to pronounce this word. So as I said earlier, we are probably dealing with someone who has a masochistic side to him. Damn it, this word again. Anyhow, his officers and generals, they don't consider him being a tough macho. But later on, lean and bold and Bolot will show you who he really is. The fact that a British diplomat, Dryden, hopes that the whole desert experience will make a man out of Lawrence is a small indication that Lawrence might have been homosexual. Also, a bit later, Lord Faisal says that no man could do what Lawrence was planning to do. And as we all know, Lawrence has actually pulled it off. Is it because he's no man?
Why are you gay?
Whether Lawrence was homosexual or not, we'll never know. Some people who knew him actually said that he was asexual. But of course, Bolt and Lean, they have their own opinion about it, and they will play it out quite subtly in the second part of the movie. Lawrence has a choice between 4 identities. He can be an Englishman, a Bedouin, God himself, or just an ordinary man. He's an Englishman already, but he doesn't want to be it. So only 3 possibilities remain. The search for Lawrence's identity starts with the moment when he gets the mission to go to the desert, to which Lawrence says, "Oh, it should be fun." And then Dryden reacts to that by saying, "Lawrence, only 2 types of creatures get fun in the desert, Bedouins and gods, and you are neither." And at the end, Lawrence ends up thinking that he's a Bedouin, sometimes God, and sometimes both together. He has this admiration for the desert because it's clean. He also at the same time admires the hard Bedouins that cross the deserts and feel the pain and suffer, and that all is of course held by his masochism. And that's why he wants to be one of them. He's completely delighted when he wears his white Arabic robe for the first time. And further on, he sees himself in his romantic vision of the Arab as an Arab sheikh when he walks on the roof of the train after a won battle. The climax of that urge to go through the life as an Arab takes place when he thinks he's invisible in Dera. In this scene, Lawrence is being shot at. He sees the person shooting at him even, but he doesn't move at all. He just really believes that he cannot be hit. But one thing happens after another, and his arrogance has led to him being arrested, tortured, and raped by the Turks. So Lawrence is mistaken in his idea of the Arab. It's not all fun and godly. In one of the scenes, King Faisal says, "No Arab loves the desert. We love water and green trees. There is nothing in the desert, and no man needs nothing." And there you see another reference to Lawrence being gay, as again, he is indeed no man. Parallel to the urge of being an Arab, Lawrence started thinking that he also has something divine, like in that scene when he was being shot at and he didn't even move. And you know, this is encouraged by everyone around him. At first, Lawrence challenges the God himself, or Allah, because there's this scene where he notices that one of the camels doesn't have its rider anymore and wants to go back for the fallen man. People are telling him that he will be dead during his rescue mission, and that is a fact, they say. It is written, they say. But that gives Lawrence the chance to prove that nothing is written. After he successfully comes back, he becomes a kind of Jesus with followers, a Christ figure who saves lives, who dares to go through the devil's anvil, who everyone sees as his equals. Lawrence, he accepts his status of Jesus, and in one of the scenes when he's preparing to go to Dera, he asks his subordinates somewhat mockingly, "My friends, who is prepared to walk on water for me?" But shortly after, the image of a leading and forgiving New Testament Messiah disappears. And that because in one of the battles, Lawrence is forced to kill. His servants are dying in huge numbers, and he cannot do anything about it. That makes him vengeful towards the Turks. His masochism turns into sadism, and he orders to take no prisoners during one of the battles later on. During and after this scene, the Jesus in Lawrence completely disappears. "Jesus wept! Jesus wept!" shouts the journalist who sees the massacre. So this transition from a New Testament to the Old Testament has been announced early on. From this moment on, Lawrence thinks he's Moses. That you can see in the scene where Auda Abutai asks him, "You will cross Sinai?" To which Lawrence replies, "Moses did." After that, Abi reacts furiously. but Moses was a prophet and promise of God. And this already suggests that Lawrence was not immediately a favorite of God or even a prophet. Just like Moses belonged to two groups, Lawrence also switches between Arabia and England all the time. And also just like Moses, Lawrence will not get to see the promised lands or the unification of Arab people. By now you might be asking yourself, why is the movie so concentrated on Christianity, while the movie actually takes place in a Muslim country? Well, the answer to that would be that the main target audience of the film were people from the Western Europe. I mentioned before that Lawrence's arrogance has sometimes led him too far, and therefore he was captured and tortured by the Turks, and he completely loses it. There are several indications that try to show us that Lawrence was raped. For example, the way the Turkish colonel Kemal looks at Lawrence, or Lawrence being completely crushed as if he was badly humiliated, and so on. That's the end of Lawrence as a god. He has tried to be everything, but he failed. And in those moments of support after Lawrence being raped, his friend Ali tells him, "Eat. You have a body like other men." So from now on, for some time, Lawrence will walk around believing that he is just an ordinary man. He says, well, any man is what I am, and that he's going back to General Allenby to ask him for a job that any man can do. And even later, he says that he just wants his ration of common humanity. He is now humble before the God he has challenged, and even prays in one of the scenes, "I pray that I may never see the desert again. Hear me, God." The structure of the film suggests that this is the lowest point of Lawrence as a character. But this is good for the character development and for us as viewers, because when there is a low, there is also a peak coming. And by character development, I mean that Lawrence seems like by the end of the film accepts his homosexuality. But even if he doesn't, he understands the most important thing, is how human he is. And that human, no matter how special, has limits. In the beginning, when Lawrence is sent on that mission in Arabia, he starts off very enthusiastically. He believes in a lot of things. He believes that he can let Arabia win, or that at the end he can free up the Arab people. But what he doesn't realize is that he's been manipulated by so many people. For example, General Allenby or Lord Faisal in Arabia. And those people in their places are manipulated by something even bigger, maybe a country, such as England or the French. So all of this hierarchy above Lawrence helps him realize that he's so small and that he's been reaching for way too much all this time. Bolt and Lean with their movie brought us a very modern look on the Icarus story. Icarus is that guy who had wings and tried to fly to the sun, but his wings melted and he crashed. From the very first fantastic cut to the sun, you know what will happen with the main character. He will try to reach to the sun, and just like Icarus, Lawrence's pride is punished throughout the movie. After all, it's not really surprising that his ego was punished, because it is too crazy of an idea to think that you, as a colonizer, can free up the colonists. But Lawrence's journey still makes sense, because his second purpose was to find an identity, and after having a long and a punishing road behind him, he finally finds it. He's neither a god nor a Bedouin, he's just an ordinary Englishman, the one that he never wanted to be. At this point, he may have learned how to be humble and understood that the exploiter can never set the exploited free. Guys, although it sounds like a lot of information and it sounds as if it's a complex film, I just want to say that I really enjoyed this movie. I never thought that I could enjoy a movie from 1962 so much, but it's super interesting and now for sure in my top 10 of my favorite movies of all time. And that was Movie Dissect, and thank you for watching.